Hello, Gems. Welcome to another episode of Tiaras and Tech. I'm your host, Shelley Benhoff, and today I'm talking to Kelly Brennan about working with ECommerce. She is a Sitecore developer and Sitecore Commerce MVP. We talked about her experience finding jobs through World of Warcraft, what problems the Sitecore Commerce platform solves in e-commerce, and the importance of soft skills for teams. Without further ado, on to the episode. Hey, Kelly, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks, Shelley. I'm really happy to be here as well.
Awesome. So let's just kind of jump right in and have you tell us your story of how you started in tech, how you ended up as a, Sitecore MVP and all of that.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a strange story. As a kid, I was always really interested in computers, using them, and, eventually the internet. It was still, kind of new within my family circle and things growing up, and my mum was a little bit frightened by it. As I think most parents of kids in the 90s were.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, I started getting more and more interested in it in school. But ultimately, when it came to university, I decided I wanted to study economics and social sciences. So did that for quite a while, and eventually started working at a computer store and was doing more with hardware. And started going to what we call TAFE in Australia, which is like technical college or maybe like community college in the States, just kind of on the side, doing computer hardware servicing, and eventually realized I wasn't that interested in what I was going to uni for anymore, and decided to make a change over to computer science. And then I got my first job in tech actually through World of Warcraft.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
had
I
no
am
idea you
serious.
were into that. Oh, I'm so excited
Yeah.
about this conversation.
So I was in a guild with somebody that I met in my Arabic class. And his high school friends had a small web development company, and they were looking to bring on like their first other employee. So I went in for an interview thinking there's no way on earth I'm going to get this job. I've been studying computer science for 6 months. And I did, and started out just doing HTML, CSS. And then, one afternoon, my boss was like, I'm going to head out for the afternoon. Can you try and figure out what's going on with this page? I'm like, okay.
Sure.
I'm like, this is an ASPX page. Like, what is that? So I then found out what .NET was, and started doing, more ASPX web forms work. And then eventually got my next job also through World of Warcraft, who was another person in my guild, worked for another company, and they were looking for people. It was a streaming video company, again, back in Sydney. And so, yeah, I started there and eventually kept moving. And my next job was actually with Sitecore, although I had not heard of it when asked about it in my interview.
Oh,
I was
same.
asked, do you know Sitecore? And I was like, no, but I know CMSs. I've been working on a CMS. I've been working with like a homegrown CMS, and yeah, started work with a company called DT Digital at the time, and then now AKQA, and met some really amazing people working there and some really amazing Sitecore people. And that's where I first kind of heard about the Sitecore MVP program. And it was something that I really wanted to be able to, get to that level. And that was kind of driving my, what I wanted to learn and how good I wanted to be at what I was doing. And then when I left, DT, I started working shortly after that for a company called Switch. And shout out to the people at Switch IT back in Sydney, because I still love all the people there. It's a really great company. And really the reason that I left was that I moved to a different country. But yeah, they were so supportive in, wanting to become a Sitecore MVP. And that was actually I think the first year where they really changed the rules around how you could apply to be an MVP versus it kind of going through your company sort of and being proposed that way, which I think was a great move to really kind of open it up and encourage more people in what they were doing. So I applied. You still did need Sitecore nominations, like nominations from Sitecore employees, but I was, really lucky to work very closely with some of the Sitecore team in Australia, and that's kind of where it started. And I moved to the States, and I'm onto my working with my second company over here. And I think as well, EPAM has been a really great company to work for that's really supportive of what we do within the Sitecore community, and that helps with becoming a Sitecore MVP.
That's
So yeah, that's
amazing.
my long drawn out story of how I got into Sitecore and how I got into tech. Kind of revolves around World of Warcraft.
That is so funny. So let's talk about World of Warcraft. I played it I started in 2000, I guess, 6, and I stopped, this past year. I was just wondering, how do you feel about Blizzard's, demise that's happening right now with them treating women so poorly? And there's this story that I talked about once on the show where their lactation room didn't have a lock, so men would just go in there while a woman was lactating and like hang out.
Yeah, so honestly, I stopped playing World of Warcraft quite a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, when the news came out about, kind of their treatment towards employees, particularly women, I have to admit, like, I wasn't surprised.
Oh God, me too.
The idea that their company culture could be so bad was, I think, a lot of us working in tech have experienced similar things that you're just not surprised,
Yep.
which is a horrible thing to say. And also that things haven't changed that much throughout the course of some of these companies. And do I hope that it's a big moment of change for them? Yeah. Do I doubt it's going to happen? Probably.
Yeah, same.
Which is really sad because, I enjoyed playing the game, and I think the biggest part of what I enjoyed was actually like the community aspect of it, in that I was a member of a really good guild.
Yeah, me
That
too.
was a mix of people that knew each other from high school, and friends of theirs that they'd met throughout their lives, and a lot of like couples playing as well.
That's
So
cool.
I think it made it a lot easier. But when you started doing kind of like things with people that you didn't know, and you were just like, oh, this is a thing that I hate about like playing online games and
Oh,
interacting with
pugs.
some people in that community. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that people take it as a moment to stop and think, not just in tech, but also, in general, and don't just randomly walk into rooms like in your office building. Like, people deserve to have a safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has been such a recurring term on my show, and I've said it on other podcasts that I've been a guest on, like safe space.
Yeah.
That is what that's what everyone needs. Men and women, we all need a safe space. Yeah, but all of the Blizzard stuff, when it came out too, I was not surprised, but I had invested all of those years in a character. I played a gnome mage named Cinderella.
Oh, I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, totally. Oh my God. And I felt like someone had died. Like I felt like, am I never gonna play this character again? It was, the first time that I sort of mourned the loss of a digital character that I had created.
Yeah.
Like it was really strange, but now I'm kind of like, yeah, it wasn't a great game for my mental health. I was in tons of groups in raids and stuff where people were just total trash. So this past year, I, along with, millions and millions of people, moved over to, ooh, my stutter is going to come out today. Final Fantasy 14.
Okay.
Yeah. And holy crap, that community is amazing. They're like the polar opposite of the toxicity in WoW. Like, people have helped me. People have gone out of their way to help me. I I played a healer for a while, and I was really bad at it at first, and when I would go into instances with people, I was expecting, you suck, I'm out of here, but they were just like, can we give you some tips? Yeah.
I think that's a really good kind of like lead into some other topics about, being a woman in tech, or even just starting out in tech in general, for a
Totally.
lot of us. And I think on both sides, it's, one, we need to learn how to be more patient with people. And it's definitely like, I'm not a very patient person. At least I feel like I'm not. Sometimes people tell me I am, and I'm like, do you know me? Like, are we having different interactions?
Yeah.
And I think it's, learning to be more patient with people, as you get more senior and you're dealing with junior people, to just really understand that and remember that you were in that situation once where you didn't know anything. And I definitely was. And kind of thrown in, and just being able to support people rather than just, blow them off or push
Right.
things away. Or, in some cases, like, even just take it away yourself and just be like, okay, this is too hard. We've got a deadline. Let's do it. Like, I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
so I think that, and just, giving people support, and support to learn and grow. And I think it's really, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that I've actually had this talk with a number of people lately about soft skills for devs. And I'm currently creating a Pluralsight channel, just listing all of the courses I took, on empathy. Emotional intelligence is a huge one. There are tons of courses on that. And patience, I think, in my life especially, if I stutter, if I block or something, I'll pause a long time, or it's not a long time, but I think the average is about 10 seconds before I see the person become very uncomfortable. And that's patience, honestly. Like, you have to learn patience in order to just let people exist around you. Like, we're all on our own journey. Um, yeah, but really, soft skills will really help, because the time is over where people, expected devs to be like white men that live in their mom's basement or something like that. It's
I was
just like,
rewatching Jurassic Park the other day, and I'm just like,
right, cringe. Yeah.
at least the beginning. Then they get, the young girl like saves the day. So
Oh my God. And she's like hacking. She was
yes,
just navigating the operating system. That's not hacking. That's just using the freaking computer and figuring it out. But still, yeah, I loved that story.
I mean, it's nice to still have some representation. I
Yes.
know I did you watch Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist
I did
at all?
not, but people have
Okay.
said like I
At
should.
the beginning, I was just like, oh dear God, like, what are they doing? Because she was like a coder. And quite frankly, like, I don't think I've ever referred to myself as a coder. It seems like an odd job title. It's kind of
Mhm.
like one of my responsibilities, but it's not all I do.
Yeah.
As you said, soft skills are important and probably take up a lot more of our jobs nowadays. But yeah, it turned into like a really, really fun show, and showed a lot of dynamics about, kind of startup culture, and also, what it's like to work in some tech environments that are not just, not really diverse in gender, but also in racial diversity and things like that, within the tech industry. So it got
Yeah.
quite deep. Unfortunately, I think they cancelled it. They had a holiday special over on Roku, but I'm still hoping there might be a next season because I really enjoyed it, and it's
Cool.
like a
Yeah.
musical as well.
Oh my
So
God, are you serious? How have I
yeah,
never watched this?
yeah, you've got to watch it.
Yeah, this reminds me of in college, like I was studying computer science, and people, very quickly find out that I love Disney. I had never seen Tron. And somebody was like, "You are studying computer science and you've never seen Tron and you're a gamer? Like, go watch this." And now it's like one of my favorite movies ever, like
I've only watched
yeah,
the newer
no,
ones. I haven't
it's,
watched the old ones. So
yeah,
maybe I've got to go do that as well then.
the original one, like the
Okay.
villain is the master control program, the MCP. And I was just like, yeah, I'm all in.
All right. I'm going to have to give that a go then too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so back to tech and stuff. I'm sorry. This, it's a podcast. We go off on tangents and stuff. It's
I'm with
fine.
me. It's
No one
how I am in
cares.
general.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so you are actually a Sitecore Commerce MVP. I know very little about Sitecore Commerce or e-commerce in general. Like I've never worked in e-commerce as a web developer,
Okay.
which is really odd to me. So tell me about e-commerce and how Sitecore's product solves problems for you.
Yeah. So ultimately, Sitecore Commerce as a product has evolved so much over the time that I first started working with it. So when I was working with Switch, I started on, I think it was, one of the first Sitecore Commerce implementations within the Asia Pacific region. And that was back, shortly after they acquired Commerce Server. So it was a very different product to what it is now. And what Sitecore Experience Commerce is, and we can talk about Sitecore's other commerce offerings after. But yeah, it was a very different product, and essentially like a very different way of working with Sitecore. So coming from Sitecore XP to Sitecore Commerce was a huge change. It was a very, very user interface, but in a Windows form application. It was, so there was a lot of like, how is this going to work? How are we going to interact, our front end application with Commerce Server? And a lot of people have very negative feelings about Commerce Server. I quite, you get like any piece of technology, you get used to working with it. And with that experience comes a lot more understanding. And then, when Sitecore Commerce changed and it became a hybrid commerce server and then the new Experience Commerce platform, it was like another shift. And we were starting to work with .NET Core within Sitecore, which, at the time, and I can't even remember when that was, I feel like it was 2017.
Wow.
It was one of the first Sitecore kind of products and part of their platform to move towards .NET Core. I think publishing service might have been the first. But yeah, it was an entirely different way of working with Sitecore. Even things like the idea of a pipeline changed. Like we have our pipelines in, that we define in our configs in Sitecore XP. It was very different to that. And with that, in a way, you kind of lost some of the flexibility that you had with Commerce Server, and then into moving into a way, though, that thankfully was easier to integrate with. And I think that shift then, when the product went fully into XC and that kind of .NET Core microservices-based architecture, it really kind of changed how we were thinking about integrating commerce with Sitecore, thinking about how we could extend the platform. And I think it was really that extensibility that had a really good benefit towards solving problems with e-commerce and Sitecore. And then, when they purchased 451 and acquired, the Order Cloud platform as well, if you haven't used it, it's actually like it's very like refreshing.
Hmm.
Coming from XC, where integrations, whilst the platform was built to be able to you could integrate with it, and it did have the idea of plugins and things like that, it wasn't um, executed in a way that was similar to what we're kind of seeing now for extensibility in SaaS platforms and things like that. So the idea of webhooks wasn't there. Could you do it? Yes, you could. You could implement that, but it wasn't necessarily the same extensibility options that we saw with Content Hub, but thankfully now we're getting that with Water Cloud. Also, the documentation is fantastic. You can have a sandbox. You can just go and sign up and get a sandbox and start playing around. I went through a fun process of doing like a POC of integrating EPAM's headless commerce accelerator with Order Cloud, which I presented on at Symposium last year with my co-worker.
I watched that.
Yeah. And that was fun. And I think that it was really like I also love that I had a problem, I'm like, I can't figure out why this is not working. I go into the Sitecore Slack, into the Order Cloud channel, and you can be like, I can't figure out why this is not working. And Order Cloud support will respond to you.
That's amazing.
And help you. And I'm just like, it is one of the best things ever.
Absolutely.
But what Order Cloud also has is a very, the capabilities for B2B are a lot stronger than they have been in previous Sitecore Commerce kind of products. So that's fantastic. So it also allows you to do, B2C still, but also marketplace and B2B a lot easier and with less customizations. And because of its integration options, getting that kind of full enterprise implementation. So looking at master data management and ERP and PIM and kind of reaching out and customizing prices from various sources, which is important for B2B, is a lot easier to accomplish than it has been with kind of other iterations. So I think from what can it offer for a business, definitely that, kind of a modern API first development approach, the integration options, documentation and support, I think is something that we don't always think about as much, but are, tremendously important. And I think for the Order Cloud product, it's definitely there. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm just remembering Commerce was purchased, I think in 2013-ish. I was supposed to write training for it. So I started to study it and stuff, but the product wasn't ready yet, I guess. But yeah, I just dusted the cobwebs off of my brain and was like, oh yeah, I forgot about all this. Yeah.
We have kind of forgotten about the commerce server era.
Yeah. Originally, yeah. I'm glad to hear it's improved. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah. And I am also remembering that I do have experience in e-commerce, sort of. I implemented a PayPal button on a web page that was classic ASP, I think, is kind of where I started, and Dreamweaver, as my IDE. But yeah, that brings back a lot of memories of not having source control and trying to work on a team and having somebody overwrite your stuff.
Just storing code on network drives.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Then you started using SVN and you're like, whoa, what is this? And then you're like, and you're like, what just happened? Oh my God. Have I gone back to I don't understand anything anymore?
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm so thankful that we have good source control now. Yeah.
But I also think, you were saying, oh, I've only done a little bit of e-commerce, but even doing things like implementing PayPal buttons does teach you about that payment processing flow, and the importance of security and making sure that you're kind of following the correct process there.
Yep.
because there are a lot of complexities around payment processing, and especially now everybody wants to be able to pay with PayPal, by their credit card, with Google Pay, with Apple Pay,
Yeah.
and how can you manage all of that? And yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely counts.
It's a lot. And I, I remember I felt surprised that it was so easy. They literally were just like, here's your HTML and your JSS, just put it on your site, and it like just worked. But then again, I it like wasn't a cart type,
Yeah,
situation. It was one product, you
yeah.
know. Yeah. So
There's
I'm assuming
varying,
with carts it's harder.
yeah, and I think that's it. There's varying degrees of e-commerce and varying degrees of like automation, I guess, around that. Like, inventory management is something entirely different. Like, do you need to only sell things that you have? Like, do you want to do pre-orders? Do you want to do back orders? And like every little option just like goes beep, 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 beep. And then you're just like, yeah, like, do I want to automatically, I need to do inventory, I need to ship to multiple warehouses, I need to drop ship. It just like, yeah, incrementally, like each thing that you add just like kind of is that multiplier of complexity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So e-commerce can be big and small.
very true. I can't even imagine the complexity of something like commerce, like just, having a whole cart of products. I mean, I'm a Amazon person, like a lot of us are, unfortunately. But their entire setup is so smooth and seamless, and I feel like it has really standardized like what e-commerce experience should be to the
Should
user.
be is
Yeah.
kind of the key word there. And I
Mm,
think we talk about it a lot that, people's expectations, especially, with 2-day, 1-day, same day
yeah.
shipping, have really changed what they expect out of e-commerce. And also free shipping. So people forget that you do actually pay, technically you pay for Prime.
You do.
So
And it's a lot now.
yeah, like 130 something.
Yes.
So they're like, oh my God, I have to pay $5 for shipping. And you're like, you pay for Prime.
Yeah.
Um, we forget it. I think their model of like charging you kind of upfront
Yeah.
and then giving you free shipping definitely helps people just kind of click add to cart, add to cart.
Yeah.
And I will say, Amazon isn't always the cheapest place to buy things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you have to check. And I've also seen scams as well, occasionally. It isn't as much as it used to be, but yeah, it's still out there, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about tech leadership. You are a tech lead, right? I think.
I'm a solution architect over at EPAM,
Okay.
but yeah.
You've had experience, and I mean, a solution
You're
architect
still
is
leading teams
pretty much the
and
same
yeah.
thing. Yeah. It's just more like specialized, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing, more kind of high level architecture and less like, day-to-day kind of, leadership and coordination of the team. And I think every company kind of does it a little bit different. Because, I have been a tech lead before, and you're still kind of doing architecture, you're still, designing the platform and the implementation. But I think, to be a successful tech lead, I definitely think the things that we touched on before, about patience and just a willingness to help, definitely kind of impact how successful you can be there, and how well that you can work with a team. But also, I think overall for me in my career, one of the biggest things that I think has helped with my growth has really just been a willingness to learn, and a desire to learn. And if you want to learn, and you've kind of developed a set of tools for how you do that, then you can do I'm going to say you can do anything. I was going to
Absolutely.
say almost anything, and I'm like, no. And I kind of like to apply that across the board. You know, when I started out in Sitecore, as I mentioned, like I hadn't worked with Sitecore, and we just started out. DT had just started their Sydney office, so we had, I think, one other person who had done their Sitecore certification, but that was pretty much it. And you know, you've got to be able to have those resources to like sorry, you've got to be able to have that willingness and to be able to find and develop the resources that you need to do things. But after that, you know, I feel with so much constant change and even constant change within the Sitecore offering, if you don't want to learn, I mean, you could still, I'm sure you could still get by, but I think if you want to be successful and you want your teams to be successful and your customers to be successful, then you've got to want to be able to learn and be willing to learn new things and to try out new ideas. And it's funny, one of my colleagues, we started out working on the same project together at EPAM, and we couldn't be more different in our approaches. Here's and we've worked together on subsequent projects instead, and he is like the very careful. He will take a backup and take a backup of the backup and before he does things, and like will, you know, save the code file. I'm like, it's in Git, like come on, like it's in source control, but he'll save it if we're making major changes. I'm like a bull in a China store. I'll just go in, like break things and then be like, okay, let's get it back together. And we just had these like two opposing ways of doing things. And I think it's kind of funny because we offset each other at times where I needed like a little bit of reining in. He would be there to rein me in times where I'm like, let's do it. He's, you know, I could encourage him to be able to kind of take some more risk. I don't think they were risky moves, like deleting a file.
Yeah, I've been there. I've deleted like branches by accident before, which is why I'm a lot like the guy that you just described. Like I would take backups of code, even though it was stored in Git, because I had done some stuff. There's a website out there, anyone that's listening, it is called Oh Shit Git. And it just kind of lists some of the no-nos and what you should do instead. It's fantastic. A coworker sent it to me after I did that, and he was like, this isn't a joke. Like I'm trying to help you. I understand what happened, and it's okay. Just here's this site for your reference later.
I think that's the thing as well, though, that, you know, at times, I mean, we like to forget our mistakes sometimes, but we've all made them. Like, I don't think anyone's gone through their entire career without deleting something that they should have deleted, whether that's, you know, a Git branch, or in my case, forgetting a you know, the select clause in a, you know, the where clause in a delete statement in SQL. And I think one of the funny things, did you get or see the things about the HBO, I think it was HBO Max email that like some junior developer accidentally sent out?
Oh my God, yes.
And the
instant
response,
I saw, I knew.
Yeah. But also the response, you know, on kind of Twitter and in the development community of like, we've all been there, we've all done that. Like, you've got to just let it go, move on. Everyone makes mistakes. It's about, I think, you know, being accountable for the mistakes that you've made. And, you know, I think often we try to explain things and justify things, but in the end, like, you know, sometimes we make mistakes, and I think admitting that we've made them and, you know, learning from mistakes and also like how to mitigate some of that risk is also really, really important, and important when you're leading teams as well.
Absolutely. I actually made that exact same mistake that person did once. I worked at a online school, and I was working on, you know, marketing stuff, and I was testing out the HTML of the newsletter, and I accidentally did it in production, and the marketing manager like yelled at me, and she was just like really angry, but like it didn't say anything bad. My test text was "a dream is a wish your heart makes." So that went out to a whole bunch of students' parents. Who cares, you know?
Yeah. Also brings up another thing, like be careful with your test content, people. Because at
Yes.
some point you will accidentally send something or you will accidentally publish something. So be careful with what you're putting there and try and like use something like you don't want to be too realistic, but you don't want to be complete gobbledygook either. So, yeah.
Gobbledygook. I love that. I have worked in health care a lot. And so one of the sites I led, one of the people on the team, her test page was about breast cancer, and it had like an image of what's in the breast and everything. And the rest of us were just kind of like, we should pick something else. This is weird. It's making us uncomfortable. Um, but I mean, there were a ton of ailments to choose from. I chose asthma because I have asthma. So it was, educational content that I could learn from while I was testing
Yeah.
my features. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about women in technical positions. What support is needed for us to be successful?
Yeah, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. I made a transition from what we call delivery in EPAM, working on client projects and kind of seeing it from sort of the beginning to the end over to our digital consulting team, which does, consulting engagements and pre-sales and things like that. So I've kind of moved a little bit away, but I still get to do technical things. So I feel like it's the best of both worlds because if my bull in a china shop analogy didn't give it, like I like change, I like, frequent challenges. So I think part of it, to be successful, first you've got to sort of understand what you want. And whether that's that you want constant change, you want stability, you want to be able to, finish up at 5 or 4 or 6 or whatever, and, be out playing with your kids or something like that. I think you've got to understand what you want and what you want to prioritize. And you can work to find a position that really suits what you want and what you want to get out of your career and your life. And for instance, I think, Shelley, that's something that, I really admire about what you've done in developing what you want to do and just, really blazing forward with that. And yeah, so I think the first thing is like you've got to and you don't need to know everything. You don't have to have all of the answers, but just something guiding that you're either working towards something or you're working towards trying to figure out what you want and like trying new things, and really being open with that and being open with your managers and with the people that are supporting you, or with your mentors to have them on the lookout for opportunities that might suit you as well.
That's
And
amazing.
because otherwise you're going to get stuck in something that you don't enjoy and you're not going to know what else is out there for you, I think. And there are plenty of opportunities, especially within the market at the moment. There are plenty of opportunities out there. And you can also create your own opportunities as well. I'm not really brave enough to do that. I'm a oddly enough, I will go in, break code, no problems. But otherwise, I like a level of security there.
Yeah.
But I think that, and really just having outside of work, like a very, a supportive environment for yourself. Whilst we get caught up in work, it's not our entire lives. And having hobbies, having, a supportive partner and children and things are incredibly important. And making sure that you're on the same page with everybody around, like those expectations of, what you want and what they want. So it's kind of funny, the things are not really tech specific. I think they kind of work anywhere. And the other thing I think is that you need to support other people too. Whilst, we touched on it, that we weren't surprised by some of the things that have happened within the tech industry, I would say within business in general, some of the stuff I don't find at all surprising. um, it's overwhelming at times that we're still within this environment that can be um, unfriendly towards being diverse. And yeah, it's kind of tough, but I think that we've got to be able to support the people around us as well and try to make change where we can. I think that, a lot of us kind of start out wanting to make big changes and wanting to really, really, I don't feel like I'm explaining it well, but we want to make big changes and then we kind of get beaten down a bit by our inability to make movement. And I think accepting that you can't always change things,
Yeah.
then sometimes you've just got to leave.
Yes.
And and some people see that as like failure or quitting, whatever. But sometimes you just got to leave, got to support people. And as you mentioned, even things that feel small, like not playing World of Warcraft and not paying that subscription fee to a company, can make a difference to how they continue on in the future. So if it's like you're leaving a job and if somebody asks you, like, how was it working there? Maybe you have to be honest to that degree. I think an openness towards work environment and things like salary and compensation, talking about that more will definitely impact how companies operate in the future, because people are less likely to want to put up with some of the things that historically we have. So, what services and what accommodations do they provide for women? Do they have, a safe space for returning mothers? Do they offer maternity leave? Do they offer parental leave? Like, all of those things, I think, will feed more and more into what people are looking for in a company. And I think that historically, the tech industry has kind of had given an impression that they are very very modern and very like, oh, we don't wear suits and we have open plan offices and we feed you and all of this weird stuff. But I think that, I say weird, it's not really weird, but
It's
it
just
was
stuff.
different.
Yeah.
But it's not all that's there. It's not just the, the big name, the big tech name that is why you want to work there. I think the corporate culture and accountability for the businesses that we work with and the businesses that we do business with are important.
Absolutely. You touched on something that is so close to my heart. Sometimes you just have to leave. It's not a failure. If you take yourself out of a toxic situation that you can't change, that is not a failure. I hung on to so many jobs. The story of a light maker, how they, oh
is that
no,
like the printer thing, or am
no,
I
no, no, no.
okay? No.
It was a Sitecore partner that I worked for maybe like a year or two, and I like the people. I loved the people. It was amazing, but I noticed that more and more executives started leaving. The Sitecore people started leaving, and then one day they called a staff meeting the day before payroll, and I said to myself, I'll bet they can't pay us. I don't know how I knew. I've just worked for so many shitty places and that's what happened. They called us all into this meeting and we're just like, we can't run payroll tomorrow. And people were crying and whatever. I stayed until their very last day of operation. Why? Why did I do that? I mean,
We feel this weird sense of loyalty to people and companies sometimes, and I think you start out by feeling loyalty to people. Like, you work with, your manager, with your co-workers, and it feels like that it's a team, but at the end of the day, businesses trying to make money. And yeah, I think that you go through those situations, and I've been through similar ones, where, yeah, you're like, why did I put up with this for so long? And it can be as simple as not getting paid on time, and like constantly on time. And I think, we kind of saw it that, like, in 2020 and things, people were like, oh, well, you should have at least like 6 months worth of salary
I
saved up. And
didn't.
I'm like, really? Like, if you don't, but somehow businesses would,
Yeah.
needed bailouts. But anyway, we won't go into that because but yeah, I mean, I think looking after your employees and making sure that you are not trying to operate whilst financially insolvent is probably a really pro-business move.
Yes, they were completely insolvent. And to tell us the
Yep.
day before payroll was just the worst. But I always tell people, like, I think that I stayed because I didn't have savings at the time.
Yeah.
In my career, I've had like 22 plus jobs. I change jobs on an average of like once a year,
Yeah.
so I didn't want to look for another job, and I knew that I would be paid eventually, and I was, but it's still like I should have been
It's a
interviewing at least.
confidence thing as well. It
Yes.
truly is. And I am at the end of this month, I'm hitting 4 years with EPAM.
Good.
And I was looking at my LinkedIn the other day, and I'm just like, all my other engagements are like max kind of 2 years. And then I had, a 6 month and a year. And I'm just like, wow, like, yeah, because I think there's a couple of things that feed into that. One is historically in my career, before my current job, that was how you got an increase in pay. You moved.
Yep.
So that was the big one for me. And I will say, like, I actually had a lot of luck. My first two jobs, for instance, were kind of on connections. Well, obviously on connections. So I didn't feel as much pressure with the interview process. But once I started getting out there, it was like every time you kind of like, you're interviewing and inside you're like, I'm not going to get this job. And so I think having the confidence and kind of inspiring that confidence in people, because you forget like how good you are, and you kind of get stuck in that you might have some bad moments at work, or that you're thinking about leaving because you want to get paid more, and you're like, well, they're not paying me this, why would somebody else pay me this? Or the projects that you're working on, you're feeling like aren't going well, and you want to kind of be in a more positive situation, but you generally don't leave for like good reasons. Except when I left Switch. I left because I moved to America. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have left otherwise. If you can't tell, I still feel really fondly about that company. But
Good.
yeah, and I think it's a big thing, and I think it's definitely a big thing within women in general,
Mhm.
that we're not really feeling confident when we're moving jobs or wanting to move jobs, or you've got a routine set up and you don't want to
Yeah.
like change that. I mean, yeah. And financially,
Yeah.
I think it's a big thing. Like, if it's also very demoralizing when you find out that like coworkers doing the same thing as you are getting paid more
Oh
than
my
you,
God, totally.
and you're just like, and then, yes, I mean, I've definitely been in that situation, asked for a pay rise, be told no, and then you're like, okay, now I really have to like, now I
Hmm.
really have to go. And yeah, it's just, I think, as you said, sometimes you've got to leave. There's definitely jobs out there, and you're definitely, you're most likely worth way more than what you think you are.
Absolutely. I also tell people all of the time, have savings. Like I didn't really have good savings until 2020. The reason I can work on my own is because I have savings in case this goes sideways.
Yeah.
So when you are in a job you hate, I was never in a position to just quit immediately. I,
Yeah.
I would always agonize over it for like months and months, and sometimes years actually. with
Yeah.
with my last job, I knew early on I have outgrown this position. I'm not, interested in coding for hire anymore.
Yeah. And I think that
Absolutely.
approach to finances is definitely something that we don't talk about as
Yeah.
much either. And I know, I grew up, in a single parent household for most of my life. I mean, from after I left primary school, and it was like my mum working 3 jobs to make sure that we had the opportunities that we did. But you're still constantly like living on the brink, and there's a lot of things that that we don't always kind of see, that approach to money can go either way. Like sometimes it can go, people are very, very conservative with their money. Sometimes it's like people are kind of used to living like that. And so talking about finances, and I will say, I definitely in 2019, 2020 was a change to how most people approach money, I think, as well, and trying to have a little bit more of a nest egg. And the one thing that I found is that you kind of, sometimes it can be, you want to have X amount, and if you don't have that amount, then it's always sad to see your savings account with $100 in there. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to experience financial freedom in that. And I think it's, it's kind of starting somewhere, and just if you always put that $100 in, then it can grow. But definitely I understand that sometimes you need all of that money.
Yeah.
And we either talk about, people, you have to have savings, you have to have all of this, and we less talk about the people who are in that intermediate ground of saving is hard, because you frequently do have those unexpected expenses that really kind of impact your savings and your abilities. So yeah, I'm not a financial expert at all, but
Oh
I
yeah,
am
same.
definitely trying to be, more responsible with my money.
Mhm.
And there's life adjustments that come into that, getting married and things like that, and how do you approach money, in a marriage, that people should be more open to talking about. But,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. On that note, we have to wrap up, unfortunately, but that was great advice. I agree 100% with everything. Yeah. So to wrap up, can you tell us where people can connect with you?
Yeah.
I'll say that one time without
Okay.
stuttering, but go.
You're fine. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I think I'm KJaneB on Twitter. I do read a lot. I don't post as much. I'm more of a consumer.
A lurker.
There. Yeah, I like to see what's going on. And well, sometimes, I like to reach out. I am always reading. Like I read your tweet the other day, Shelley, about
Right.
your video. So
Yeah.
you can connect with me there. Also I do have a blog that's at kjaneb.com. And I will be updating that more as I start to go on my next fun journey of learning more about PCM, and Content Hub is going to be my next one.
Nice.
So that's there as well. But yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to me on either of those channels, because yeah, I'm always there and always happy to hear from people. And
Nice.
also I am frequently on the Women of Sitecore Slack.
Mhm.
So also, reach out to, you can reach out to myself, or even Shelley if you need an invite. We can send that over as well. We have a good community, and I'm taking people off topic there every day too.
No, it's
So
great. Thank you so much, for your time. I enjoyed this one a lot.
thanks, Shelley. I really enjoyed chatting too, and hopefully, maybe at some point at the end of this year, we can see each other in person again.
Oh my God, I would love that. Absolutely. If
Awesome.
you would like to support us, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow gems. Let me know in the comments what other topics you would like me to cover, and follow Tiaras and Tech on social media. Thanks for watching or listening, and have a great day.